Okay, thank you. It's a satellite servicing a geosynchronous orbit. If I may go to the second chart, my objective is to show on-orbit servicing mission design ideas that were done previously at NASA Goddard. Um, this happened about 15 years, 2010-ish, and millions of dollars descended to NASA Goddard from headquarters. I don't know how it happened. Somebody at NASA Goddard worked at. The whole bunch of us got together and we designed on-orbit servicing missions and all different orbits and different areas. And there were two objectives to finding out doing these design missions. First objective was to find out can it be really done on orbit servicing mission is really doable. Now a lot of us were from the I guess descendants of the Hubble Space Telescope first servicing mission, which I was part of. So people who had ran this mission together, and those of us in lead team were part of the Hubble Space Telescope servicing mission, the very first one, which caught the national attention at the time. So those of us that had a lot of experience at designing a on-orbit servicing using a shuttle and this Hubble Space Telescope. So they took us and then they tasked us to design on-orbit servicing mission, not just what we did on Hubble, but expanded from that idea. And for two reasons, they wanted to and then we also wanted to find out actually, can it be done? If it can be done in on-orbit servicing, what orbits and what kind of servicing can it be done? Second objective was to find how much will it cost? Is it cost effective to do it? For example, servicing an on-orbit satellite is more expensive, is cost prohibitive than launching a new mission than one headquarters, NASA's United States Congress may really need to consider what would be really cost effective. Because as you all know, whatever we do at NASA, whatever we did at NASA, this is all paid by United States taxpayers. So cost is very everybody's mind, and that was our objective. And what I want to show you today is that I was a part of the team. I was a part of the lead team. I was systems engineer, and I just wanted to show you what we did. And this was done, although it was over a decade ago we did this, and give you an idea what was done. And I heard a lot about honorary servicing, the workshops and conferences I attended last year, and I thought maybe some of you want to know what was done before and give you a starting point, maybe a little better than what you may think. That was my idea of putting this presentation together. So I took some of the charts from the work I had, but I am not going to share the cost data with you because that's not kosher to do it. But what I want to share with you is that what we found out was doing an orbit servicing is technically doable. However, in terms of the cost effectiveness, it's not necessarily cost saving unless you can figure it out servicing a satellite on orbit multiple times with the same satellite. And that's the conclusion we came up with. Okay, next. So next chart, I simply want to make sure that everybody's on the same plane. That's the purpose of this chart. And it just shows you we have Earth in the center, we have a uh low, low Earth orbit, and we have a medium Earth orbit, we have a geostationary orbit, and geostationary orbit and geosynchronous orbit are basically the same place, and which is about 36,000 kilometers from the Earth, which I looked it up. It's in miles. It's 22,336 miles from the Earth. What I'm not sure is if it's from the Earth's surface or from the Earth core, plus minus, I don't know, 100 miles or something. I don't know. So that's usually. But the difference between geosynchronous and geostationary is that geostationary is used fixed at equator. But the satellites different nations launch at geosynchronous orbit is they typically launch at where their satellite can see their country. For example, for the United States of America, Northern Hemisphere, if you launch a satellite to observe northern part of the United States, not including Alaska and Canada, mainland of the United States, you can put it there, but it's not going to be it's going to be geosynchronous orbit, and a lot of weather satellites are there. A lot of weather satellites. But for example, if South Korea, I'm sure they have one too. They have put it in geosynchronous orbit. Since South Korea is such a tiny country, a satellite will work. For America, for United States, to get a weather satellite in the geosynchronous orbit, it's not good enough because of the 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 area that has to cover. So in order to get a weather information, U.S. will launch the polar satellites, and we do that. We launch polar satellites. The data, so the weather you see every day on news TV comes from the satellite information from geosynchronous orbit plus polar satellites that NOAA launches with NASA being designed and launched, and that's how it's done. So this simply shows that. So I thought about how I'm going to put together this presentation, and I said, I I simply picked out the very first one. It's a very easy thing to do because you launch a satellite geosynchronous orbit, and when it's ready to die or replace, then you launch another one and replace. If one were to imagine send a satellite to the orbit and then you replace, repair, and whatever. You don't have to launch it. And then you get going to the number two satellite, number three satellite, then it'll be cost effective to do it that way. That's the what we designed. It was the very first one. Oh, by the way, when we studied this on-orbit servicing design, we wanted to do a 10 sorties. We call it 10 sorties, 10 missions. We ended up doing only six because it was a lot of work to do it. So we got only, but this was the very first one we did. And then if you might go to the next chart, this simply shows you, like you launch a satellite in orbit. Well, simply launching isn't good enough. You have to get the information down. So this simply shows you how the satellite's there going downstairs. It's just satellite communication. It simply remind you and me that that's how it's working. Okay, next one. Okay, next chart. Next two charts, it has like 8 tasks. What we did was we dreamed up 8 tasks that we need to do to either prove that technically we can do this, and number two, the cost comparison that we can do. So it came with us 8 tasks. First of all, we need to provide a mission plan, including the schedule, end-to-end cost estimates. We always call it end-to-end cost estimates. I'm assuming everybody knows what end-to-end cost estimate is. It's from the beginning to end, not including the study. When the project starts, all the engineers, specialty engineers you have to hire, how long they're going to be on it, all the way through the integration and test. You go to launch site and the launch vehicle, launch integration, and the launch, and including the on-orbit checkout and decommissioning. That's what we call it end-to-end mission commissioning. And then another important second item, we had to identify the trades we had to do. For example, you have to design a structure. You need to decide what kind of material will you be choosing and why. And then you compare with, for example, you're going to stainless steel 1120, you're going to use aluminum. What kind of aluminum? Is it what's the weight consequences you have to deal with? Because those things we're talking about, and we have to provide the rationale, the why you have chosen that option. And then we had to, each subsystem is required to develop detailed mission requirements based on the overall top level mission requirements that we give it to them. So it was given to test. So this involved many, many, many engineers who experienced engineers. If I go to the second chart of the 2 of 2, They were also asked to complete the integration test plan. And then also had to develop the ground system. And then for each subsystem item, we asked them to identify the technical readiness level assessment. We didn't want any TRL that's anything less than, let's say, 4 or 5, because it has to be flight ready. So you want something that is TRL 7 or 8. It has to be flight ready, because if somebody is working in a lab and then they say it's TRL 4 or 5, you really have a long way to go. It was, one time in my career in NASA, I was in charge of TRL development tasks, and I ran into a lot of issues with them, because some people will continually get a funding year after year. Their TRL is never go beyond 4 or 5. So we made up the rules that we wrote it up, and it says, if you don't advance your TRL beyond what you have, next level up in 2 years, then your funding will cut off and we'll give it to someone else an opportunity. Oh, some of these people did not like that. So that's the kind of that we're talking about. So in order to have a flight ready, your TRL assessment is very important. So that's one other thing we asked them to do. And then we also ended to ask to verify and populate the ConOps on detailed tables. Okay, that's what we wanted to do. Okay, next chart. Assumptions. There are very top level assumptions we made. The assumption was that what vehicle do you want it to do? Do you want it to be refueling or repairing? You launch an option. You have to decide ahead of time whether it's going to be a refueling on orbit servicing or repairing an option. For example, Hubble Space Telescope first servicing mission was a repair option. There was a instruments on Hubble Space Telescope that was not working. So we simply went in there and replaced it. And there was a repair mission. And then we have to make an assumption that launch vehicle is available. A lot of people have a lot of ideas of launch options, but a lot of them are on just paper only. It is. I've seen it. It's paper only. But we wanted to make sure it's actually hardware there. Actual hardware has been flown. So that launch vehicle option. And stakeholder. What I mean by stakeholder is, let's say I was working at NASA Goddard. For the NASA Goddard stakeholder at that time was the NASA headquarters and the Congress. Do they have a money to give us to do this work? That's the assumption we made. And another important thing is the team of experts are ready to, and design the mission. Do we have the engineering experts to actually design the mission? One thing about the on-orbit mission design is that this is not a job for somebody out of fresh out, what we call it fresh outs. You can bring somebody out of a college or a grad school, whatever, but we wanted somebody who has worked on a real mission, at least 1 or 2 missions. They actually seen a hardware, they actually seen how the hardware is put together, how it's designed. And that was a criteria we made. Uh, and each subsystem, including systems, is ready, able to be creating detailed mission requirements and based on the mission objectives. That's the assumptions we made. And these assumptions got changed throughout the mission. Okay, next one is mission overview. Okay, for the mission overview, next one, next chart. Okay, next for the geosynchronous orbit mission overview was we're gonna launch the geosynchronous orbit into plane of target one. We call it target one. There's a satellite there that we want to service. So we're gonna launch there, and we're gonna move to target one in proximity to target one, and then we're gonna rendezvous and capture the target one. And then after we capture the target one, we're gonna boost it to super synchronous orbit. That means geosynchronous orbit plus 350 kilometers. And then repeat the target. This is assuming that there is like at least 4 or 5 satellites we want to, let's say, if I were to assume there's a 4 or 5 satellites needs to be refueled because they run out of the fuel to continue the mission, and we simply want to refuel the mission, then we can just do this one time and come down to geosynchronous orbit, go to target number 2, capture the target 2, and then we move to supersynchronous orbit, and then we refuel it and go on and on. And that was our dreamed up idea. Okay. And by the way, refueling the satellite on orbit is probably one of the simplest and easiest thing one can think of, because I don't know any of you read the refueling at the launch site of the satellite. It's called one of the last we call it red tag items. So that refueling valve is actually visible. It's not covered with the blanket or anything, typically isn't. And it's the last item that's actually, the red tag item is removed and put it into launch vehicle and launched. So that's one item that one can actually see and capture. That's what we call it. Another thing is, in order to be serviced on orbit, we call it target satellite, the target to be serviced, it's to be designed to be serviced. If it's not designed to be serviced, the most you can do probably is this refueling. That's refueling is, you don't have to be designed to do it. You can do it even if it's designed to do it, because the valve is visible and you can actually go in and capture it. For example, Hubble Space Telescope was designed to be refurbished on orbit. So it was designed modular. It was designed to replace and repaired on orbit. So if you wanted to, let's say, if you wanted to replace a battery on orbit, it has to be designed from the ground originally to do it. Otherwise, to undo it it's going to be a little too risky. Let me put it that way. Okay. Another criteria we put it is, you have to decide when you're going to be launched. That's going to dictate your schedule. And then what's going to be we simply say, oh, it's a 5-year mission lifetime, because we have to decide a number of years because this affects the cost estimate. And then another important thing is, it has to be a Class B full redundancy. This is a NASA lingo, and I think many of you are working with NASA. I'm going to assume that you know what Class B redundancy means, but for those of you who are not familiar with it, I'm just going to repeat here. Class B redundancy means basically the single fault tolerance system, a critical system. So Hubble Space Telescope was a manned mission. It was a designed to be repaired by astronaut. So it was a Class A spacecraft. That means it was a two-fault tolerant spacecraft. It comes with a lot of problems. I mean, complications and a lot of analysis required and etc. And another thing is, and then what we have to do, you have to identify what kind of engineering expert you need to design the mission. Okay? All right. Next one. It's a mission level requirement. And then we provide the mission level requirements to all subsystems. Okay. First one is that you maneuver the geostation, I call it geostationary. You orbit to proximity of a target. You move to proximity target, provide a bus, the agility to rendezvous with, we call it a bus. That means a spacecraft. That this is a NASA lingo, which we simply call it a bus, and that's a spacecraft bus. We provide ability to autonomous rendezvous and capture. So you have to have a system designed in your system that can autonomously rendezvous with the target satellite, rendezvous with it, and then capture the satellite. Because if you cannot capture the satellite, obviously you cannot service anything. All right. And then you have to have ability to move. So what you do it is, it's kind of like a handover thing. You capture the satellite and then you take over, you kind of turn off that the target satellite operation, and your satellite take over, and then you move the whole thing to the super synchronous orbit, and then you do what you need to do. In doing all this, you have to provide electrical power, commanding data downlink, and all that thing is required to do the work. That was the requirement we gave. And another thing, you have to provide adequate expendable resources to perform 10 times. That's what we said. For example, if you were to launch on-orbit servicing satellite to a geosynchronous orbit, and then you wanted to do 10 sorties, then you have to have a fuel on your satellite about refueling in 10 satellites. That's what we meant by that. So you have to carry that much fuel with you if refueling is what you're doing it. Okay, so that's the requirement you gave. And then next uh is this is just give you an idea, this over operations concept. The same thing as before. You launch it in separation, you do the commissioning of your on-orbit satellite servicer, and then you rendezvous. You rendezvous and proximity to the rendezvous, and you approach and capture, and then you boost it to the super orbit. And that's the idea. That's the you can read this what it is. If you really think about it, it's really simple. You simply launch, separate, you commission the satellite, and then you rendezvous. You rendezvous with the satellite that you want to service, and then approach and capture. And you really need a um, ACS engineer, a capable ACS engineer who knows what they're doing. Okay. Okay, orbit maneuver. Next chart, orbit maneuver. Orbit maneuver is this is where the as it's addition from the previous chart. You go to the super orbit, and then you release and then you do what you need to do. And then you release it and you go back, and specifics of a delta V's and what delta V's you need, all that stuff. And this all has to make sense to design. So, I mean, it's wonderful you do all kinds of experiments on orbit, but in order to do this on-orbit servicing from a satellite point of view, one has to be able to go up there and provide it and what they have to do. Okay? Okay. The next one is the final rendezvous profile. And it simply shows you what the final rendezvous profile looks like. Okay. And next one is the capture timeline and payload power profile. Um, while we're designing a mission, one has to be able to provide capture timeline and payload power profile and all this in as shown here. Something similar like this needs to be thought through. It has to make sense to whoever's review. I think many of you may be reviewer. NASA missions, we go through the multiple levels of reviews. When we invite the reviewer, they are not a part of your project team. They come from, I don't know where they find them, but they all come from outside of the project, outside of the study projects, and outside the people. And they look at it and they have to make sense to all these. So we did this. And then the next one is simply a ground system functional architecture. And and it, and you have to provide. United States have like a TDRS West and TDRS East. You have communications. If something goes wrong, then TDRS West or TDRS East can take over the communications. So this is what this whole thing is all about. Okay, and then you get the white sands communicating down. So in other words, before you launch a mission, you got to get all this thing and agreements done with the TDRS people, Y Sands people. All this thing has to be done, and then you'll be ready to launch. So this presentation was to simply give you an idea what it takes to create a mission such as an orbiting servicing mission. But to launch a mission, it's not that different from regular launching mission. Little more complication for the on-orbit servicing is that you have to know what you want to service. You want to refuel the a satellite, it's already in orbit, or do you want to repair the whatever is on there, or do you want to replace the battery? I mean, for the Hubble Space Telescope, we replace the battery, replace the solar array, we replaced the whole instrument. We did a whole bunch of things, okay? But the Hubble Space Telescope was designed to do that. Not too many satellites we launched since then are designed to do that at all. They just, because it's expensive to do that. It's expensive to design a mission that can be replaced in orbit. It simply is. And I mean, when we time to replace the battery, a lot of people at the project were scared to death that it wasn't going to come back online. But we did it and it came back online. It was good. And something else that happened in the first servicing mission, there was a one instrument called the GHRS. I forget what the acronym stands for. And that instrument, a side died. Like the Hubble Space Telescope was designed to be a astronaut service mission, which means a Class A spacecraft, which means it's